If I asked 100 people about their New Year resolution plan, I can bet every single one of them would list eating clean and being healthy as one of the top 3 goals. However, the paradox lies in the fact that despite being a widespread desire, majority of the people do not have the clarity needed to achieve this goal. This stems from the sheer number of fad diets doing the rounds in the market today. The constant influx of a new super ingredient, a new fad diet, a new supplement, all of which contradict the previous one, create a sense of confusion. As a result, people find themselves either resorting to meticulous calorie counting or adhering to restrictive diets, none of which actually seem to work. Fortunately for us, over the last few years, there has been a shift in the way people approach well-being. Integrative nutrition seems to be emerging as the leading player. This approach focuses not only on nutrition, but the role other elements like mental health, emotional health, stress levels, sleep, etc. play in our holistic well-being journey. And in today's episode, we will be further demystifying the complexities surrounding nutrition. My guest today is Malinda, who's a certified integrative nutrition coach. Born and brought up in Singapore, she moved to India about 15 years ago after her marriage. Here in India, she worked with the Australian High Commission for about 10 years, and it was during COVID that she decided to pursue a career in the field of integrative nutrition. Hi, Malinda. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Pooja. Lovely to be here.
So my first question to you, Malinda, is how does integrative nutrition set itself apart from all the theories that have existed in the market so far?
Okay, so integrative nutrition really stands out for its focus on the whole you. Starting with, it's beyond just calories. So unlike traditional diets that focus on calorie counting or specific food groups, integrative nutrition focuses on a very holistic approach to you. So your physical health, your mental well-being, including even your emotional connection to food. In addition to that, there is a big power in the personalized plans that come with integrative nutrition. There is no one-size-fits-all approach with integrative nutrition. It really helps people understand why certain foods work for you, how certain foods are impacting you, and that sets you up to make long-term sustainable choices for yourself that actually work for you. Thirdly, integrative nutrition looks at food as medicine. Okay, so this philosophy is very powerful because it allows people to use food to heal as well as to prevent illness. And in integrative nutrition, we look at the root cause. So we don't look at symptoms, but we look at symptoms. We're not curing symptoms, but we look at symptoms as clues of what's actually happening within at the root level. And then with the right dietary and lifestyle changes, we address that root issue. And all of that put together, integrative nutrition really is about empowering you. So that you are able to understand what works for you, your body, and that helps set you up in the long term to be able to make sustainable changes.
So, if I may summarize everything that you just said, integrative nutrition takes a multifaceted approach towards optimal health or holistic well-being. So my follow-up question to this is, does it make it simpler or more difficult for people to achieve their dream health? Because with integrative nutrition, there are so many factors and variables that have been now introduced into the overall picture of optimal health. Initially, people thought it was just a function of what you put into your system by way of what you eat. But now it's emotional health, mental health, your relationship with food, so many factors at play. So what do you have to say to that?
So I'd say, actually, I can't say if it's easier or harder, but I'd say it's definitely a step in the right direction. And, I think I mentioned this before, that earlier, and the faster we all arrive to that conclusion, the better it is for us. The thing with understanding all these different layers is, again, taking a holistic approach. I'll give you an example. Say you are feeling really stressed, and so because of that, you're eating really badly. Until you don't address the stress, you're not going to address or be able to resolve the way you're eating. And so if you look at it holistically and address the stress and your dietary choices at the same time, you definitely end up with much better results.
True.
So integrative nutrition definitely is a step in the right direction. and it helps, actually simplify things for people in understanding what those layers are that are actually impacting your health, and how this choice actually makes a difference on what you're going to do, maybe in a few days. It's all connected.
Yeah.
Now, for some people, where it could be a little harder is understanding how to manage so many things at the same time. And so, in my practice, there's a very big focus, and I do this with my clients, of not rushing anyone. There is so much power in taking baby steps, in doing only what you are ready for at that moment. Of course, if someone needs a nudge here and there, I'm there for that, but you're basically healing and getting there in your own pace.
Got it.
Yeah.
So basically, it's trying to bring out to the fore the interconnection between different facets, and pushes people to understand and dig deeper as to why what is something's working for them and something's not. So moving on, Malinda, you worked with the Australian government for a good 10 years, and I think it was during COVID that you started reading more about this subject. So what sparked your interest?
Now, this is a long one. I'd have to go back to my childhood, honestly. So growing up in Singapore, there was always a very big focus for us as a family and our upbringing as children on health. So it was always very healthy home cooking. We did a lot of physical activity as family. As kids, we were always encouraged to go out and play sports, different types of sports, and explore. There was a lot of focus on religion as well and spirituality in my family. And so growing up, those things were obviously, just a part of who I am. But I think it was two very major setbacks, personal setbacks for me in my life that kind of nudged me in this direction. One was losing my father when I was 19. He was only 48 at the time. And we lost him to an autoimmune condition that is so easily managed today. But due to the lack of research then, unfortunately, we couldn't save him. And the second major setback for me was when me and my husband, struggled with our own conception issues. And so those two things kind of made me really start questioning what is health, and, what is medicine there for, and all of that. We were talking about my work with the Australian government in India. So I was managing their refugee resettlement program. And that was a time when we were running into issues with our conception. And through my work, I was extremely blessed to get the opportunity to meet with the Dalai Lama's personal physician during one of my work trips. And I just spoke to him. I thought, me and my husband thought we were at the pinnacle of our health. We were running marathons. We were eating really clean. My husband used to play professional tennis. So we were very health focused. And no doctor could tell us why we were not conceiving. All our tests were perfect. But this one very humble physician in a very humble little clinic in Dharamshala sat with me, felt my hands, felt my pulse. And all he said was, Malinda ji, you're very healthy, but it's not the right health to welcome a baby. And that really blew me, because I thought that I understood it all, but then I realized I didn't.
Okay.
And, he sent me off with some anecdotes. Running is very stressful, and your energy is wonderful, but it's too cold. Just little things like that really got me thinking about what it was. I really then just dove into a year of research and doing trials and errors on myself, trying to understand what that very humble physician said to me, because it really stuck in my head. And I did, I made a lot of changes. I swapped out my running for more yoga. I made changes to my food. And a year later, I really did just conceive when we were not even trying.
This was natural, right?
This was natural.
Wow, wonderful.
When we weren't even planning it, we'd even come to the conclusion that we were happy if, we didn't have kids, and that was fine. And then fast forward 2 years later, a year after my son was born, our daughter arrived, just very naturally. And it was during all of this that it really sparked this sort of bulb within me, that there is so much power in not just medicine. When we're sick or when something's not happening or something's not right, we run to the doctors, but we fail to look inwards.
Yeah.
We fail to look at, what have I been doing wrong? Or maybe there's something I could be doing better, even if I've not been doing wrong, which was in my case. And that really sparked that bulb, like I said. Fast forward to motherhood. oh my gosh, like, what an experience,
Yeah.
you've been through that yourself. And I just realized, yeah, there are people out there who could really do with this knowledge and help. I helped a lot of friends and family initially, just, for fun, and it actually worked. Like, everyone felt a difference, or, it worked and paid off in some way. And so I thought, yeah.
It's wonderful to hear about your story. I think I've only read about such cases online because I follow some people, nutritionists, but I'm meeting one for the very first time. So it's really nice to know that. So how did you work on the softer aspects of your healing? Because, like you said, there's this relationship with food, your mental well-being, and so many other things.
Yeah.
So how did you work towards your healing process?
So, conception, when you're struggling with conception, it can be a very lonely journey and a very lonely struggle. More often than not, people tend to look at the woman and point their fingers at the woman, whereas, it's actually equal sort of efforts from both sides. Having said that, my husband was extremely supportive, and so were our family, but it still was a lonely journey. And like I said, I went into a year of research and trying to understand what was happening and making those changes. And so I think in terms of the softer aspects of my healing, the first thing I really looked at deeply was my emotional sort of well-being. There were things from the past that were, still sort of holding me back, things that I had not completely healed from, that I thought I did. But actually what I'd done was just buried them under more layers. And so it started with, honestly, it sounds very simple, but it was not as simple. Actually, just being very honest with myself and understanding, acknowledging what my issues were and accepting them. And that's a process in itself. And it's still a work in progress, and being very compassionate with myself, instead of pointing fingers. There was no blame. Like, there was none of that sort at all. It was just about accepting what had happened, moving on, understanding, my emotions about things. But again, that wouldn't have happened without some social support, right? And so there was some aspect of social healing to that. And just sort of surrounding myself with the people, my closest, my husband, our immediate families, people who understood what I was going through, the efforts I was making. In that, my mother was a really big role, like she played a really big role in supporting me as well, with her own, anecdotes about pregnancy and things that she'd learned. So, yeah, it's a really big, nice jump inwards, and it's very soul-bearing in a way, but yeah, you get to know yourself a lot better too.
As someone who's led a healthy and active lifestyle throughout, how is what you practice today or teach to your clients different from what you used to do, say, 10 years ago?
I'd say it's different in some ways, because now I have the formal knowledge and training, to work with clients. But again, my personal philosophy around integrative nutrition as well is based on my experience, with health and mental well-being and so on. Having said that, my approach with integrative nutrition now, I'd say, is a lot more structured. Before, it was kind of like I was fumbling in the dark, trying to understand, would this work, would that work? And it's still like that with a lot of my clients. With every client, because all their plans are personalized to them 100%, there is a bit of trial and error. And so, that experience that I've had as well in the past, that helps, because I try to bring in my own personal experience sometimes when they need the motivation. But I'd say there's a lot more purpose. There's a lot more intention about what we're doing. That's obviously fueled by all the formal training that I've had. And also there's a lot more of a growth mindset now. So before, I really had no idea if this is going to work or that is going to work. Now there is some understanding for me that this is probably going to work for you. If you come to me with, your sort of concerns and goals, I understand that. And so it just, I think, helps me help people a lot better. Yeah.
So the next topic that I'd like to understand more about is gut health, which is all the rage these days. Science has now recognized the connection between gut health and brain health. So I'd like to understand from you, is gut health the final goal of integrative nutrition, or is it just a step along the way?
So in integrative nutrition, the final goal really for everyone is optimal health. And gut health is a very important stepping stone to optimal health. Honestly, in my practice, I've worked with, out of all of my clients, 100% of them, we have touched on gut health at some point or another. And it is really interesting and important to understand this as well. Gut health actually is a work in progress. It's not really an end goal. You could have perfect gut health at some point, and then something will set you back, a course of antibiotics or, some stress. And then you have to go back to, again, doing some work on that. In integrative nutrition, we do recognize that, the gut is extremely complex and really important because it has, it impacts so many different aspects of our health, not just our, the way that we digest our food, but also are we absorbing enough nutrients, our mood, our energy levels. And so because integrative nutrition looks at, the whole you, addressing gut health is really important. And like I said, I mean, it's not the final goal, but it definitely is the center of getting there.
Got it. So my next question to you is about another topic, which is a tricky area, that is cortisol. It has picked up everybody's attention in the last few years. So there's enough research that says that short amount of cortisol actually does your body good. It could be by way of exercising or doing intermittent fasting. But then if you put your body through large doses of cortisol for a longer period of time, it's not good for your body. So how do you actually decide what level is actually good for your clients?
So you're right. Cortisol is all the rage. It's all over. There's so much information out there. It is also better known as the stress hormone, and it's picked up a lot of bad media as well because of that. But, I think we have to go back to understanding what cortisol is actually meant for. I have people asking me, I've actually just done a series on my Instagram explaining this. People asking me, like, why do we have a stress hormone when we know that stress is not good for us? And when you understand that, it makes things clear. So, if you think back to like the caveman days when we were living in the caves, and imagine being hunted for food, right? Now, cortisol is meant to be a survival mechanism for us. Nature has actually blessed us with this wonderful hormone. I want to take the bad rep away from it, as a survival mechanism. Thankfully, we're not living in those days where we're being hunted anymore. But, think about very stressful, short sort of situations that could happen. Say you're, in an accident or your life is at risk. That little short burst of cortisol is meant to, really get you in sort of that flight or fight mode. It increases your blood glucose levels. It really spikes it up because that then gives you that quick burst of energy to respond, right? And then it elevates your blood pressure because then you get the focus you need to be able to deal with that situation however you have to. In addition to that, your inflammation and your immune systems get triggered because now your body's trying to understand, like, is there any physical damage to me? Do I need to go, fix this and fix that? In short bursts. That's wonderful. What's happened is in our modern sort of society and way of living now, every little thing is starting to stress us out. Just poor time management skills, for example. So where people are just rushing from one thing to the other all day. That's a lot of pressure. Now our body can't really tell that we're not being chased by a tiger. But to our bodies, it's feeling like
it's a threat.
It's a threat. Oh my God, she's constantly on the move. She's constantly running from one thing to the other. And there's no tigers, thank God, but it is stress.
But you have emails from managers to do that.
Exactly. One scary email from your boss, and it's enough to just send your, all of that up through the roof. So that's just two examples. If we put all our modern day sort of living examples together, that's a lot of pressures and triggers. And that's when we run into issues. So you've talked about, ice baths and things like that. All those things are great in helping us sort of manage our body's sort of response system to stress in the long run and reduce inflammation. Ice baths are amazing for that. But more than that, we really need to look. There's really only one way to fix chronically elevated cortisol levels, and that's taking a really hard, honest look at what's actually causing you stress. I gave you the example about if your time management skills are poor, if you feel like you're constantly running from one thing to the other, you need to stop.
Yeah.
You need to have to look at your time management skills. Are you putting too much on your plate every day? And, it's better for you to accept now that you should take a rest when you need it rather than being forced to later on. So with my clients in integrative nutrition, like I said, we get to the root cause. And, it's a work in progress. Again, our triggers can keep changing as we, get older. And with women, hormonal fluctuations can cause stress in itself as well. But the more you start to pay attention to your body and understand what actually triggers you and why, you're able to work around that better and manage your sort of response system, so that when those situations happen, when you really need to survive that horrible situation, your body's stress response system will work much better as well.
So do you work specifically with women only?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And any particular reason why you decided to have just this one demographic as your clientele?
Pooja, because women go through so much. Look at girls these days. They're hitting puberty younger than ever before. Girls in their teenage years are already being diagnosed with issues like PCOS and thyroid and whatever. And all these things are so closely linked to their nutrition and sort of lifestyle choices. I haven't even started in adulthood. From young adulthood all the way up till menopause. There's so many different phases and health challenges and changes that a woman goes through. And each stage brings a unique set of challenges that, maybe we're not equipped to deal with. Maybe we're not born with all the answers. And I know I've been through those changes and stages myself as well. And having, someone like me would have really made a big difference. And it's been proven, integrative nutrition with its focus on, not just your nutrition, but also your lifestyle. It can really help address lifestyle related sort of issues like PCOS and endometriosis. And even with clients who are already sort of, who have a medical diagnosis and are on a medical treatment, now complementing that with integrative nutrition and making the right lifestyle and nutritional sort of changes really helps take them that extra mile. It makes a huge difference in their healing and recovery.
So in your experience of working with so many clients over the last 4 years, what are some of the common challenges that you've seen your clients go through on the journey to achieving optimal health?
So many challenges, Pooja, and not just with clients, even with potential clients who come to me and who don't end up working with me, because maybe they just don't have the time, or they don't have, maybe it's a financial constraint. There's so many challenges. I'll start with time. Women today wear so many hats. We're working, we're taking care of kids, we're cooks, I drive my kids every day. We're doing so many things.
And entertain them.
More hats. We're doing so many things. To be able to really get to the point, I think one of the biggest challenges for women actually is getting to the point where they feel like, hey, I think I need the support. Is understanding and accepting that, okay, I think I need some help. We tend to just keep putting it off. There was a study done recently that actually proved that women actually go to their doctors a lot more, but still end up with much later diagnosis than men do. Because women tend to just sort of go, okay, I think this is wrong, but no, I think it's also okay. Whereas a man would, deal with it more sort of, okay, there's an issue, let's sort it out. A woman would tend to think about, okay, if I were to go do this, how would my family be impacted? How would my job be impacted? How would my image in society be impacted, right? There's so many things that a woman has to consider. And add to that the support that she's getting. There are many, in modern day, it's a modern sort of society now, and it's lovely to see so many more men sort of helping out at home and supporting the woman's role at home. But unfortunately, a lot of women still don't get that support or the adequate support that they need. And so, for that very reason, they maybe just don't believe that they deserve, some help or support. But yeah, there are just so many challenges, and I hope that women, I've seen a change. Women are starting to accept this more, and I am certain that it will just improve.
So when you take on a new client, what kind of assessments or evaluations do you run to assess where your client is in terms of health? And then from there on, of course, start the journey with them.
So, okay. So I'll start from the very beginning, right? The client gets in touch with me. We usually start with a nice, quick introductory call. I really use that time. It's a very, very important stepping stone for me in understanding, potential clients' health concerns, goals, and then I do a little bit of digging on her health history as well, for me to ascertain if I'm actually going to be able to help her. I'm honestly very ethical with my work. If I feel like I'm not going to be able to help someone, or if my approach is not going to help someone, I'm very honest about it, because I don't think it's worth wasting anyone's time. People come to me with a very honest goal, and it's a very personal experience that we go through. And so if I feel like I cannot, help them with that, I'm very clear from that point. But I also, the introductory call is also really important because I get to explain my philosophies and the way that I work, so that a potential client then gets to decide for herself if I'm the right fit for her. And I may not be the right fit for everyone. So after that introductory call is done, there are forms to be filled where then I really assess her health history in a lot of detail. And I look at any blood reports that have been done in the last sort of 6 to 12 months to make sure that everything's sort of lining up with the picture that I have in mind, and that this is really someone I can help. But there are situations where I really do draw the line for ethical and professional reasons. Someone comes to me and says, I want to lose 10 kilos in like a month. I decline very politely because that's not what integrative nutrition is about. And honestly, anyone who promises you that, like, you should try and run in the opposite direction as quickly as you can, because I'll be honest, Pooja, I've had clients come to me, and then go off to work with other clients, other dietitians or nutritionists or whatever. And there are some really fantastic ones out there, but then, the odd sort of, yes, they'll make false promises or whatever. And they come back to me again. It comes full circle. They come back to me 6 months later and they go, I lost all the weight, but, I
regained it
and more. Plus now my hair is looking really bad and my skin is suffering and my gut is off, and then we start working from there. So it's a really interesting part of the process.
So I think it's high time people realize that achieving good health is about creating lasting lifestyle changes. It has to be sustainable. It takes time. It's not a shortcut. So my next question is, when you work with a client and you've run a battery of tests and arrived at a certain, say, point A, and you want to go from point A to point B, so what does your prescription, if I were to say, look like? I mean, I'm sure it would have a prescripted meal plan, but beyond that, what kind of support do you offer?
So with integrative nutrition and also personally for me in my coaching, I don't provide a prescriptive meal plan. I try not to. There are situations in which I do, but to begin with, we usually work on more of a nutritional guide. So, like I've touched on before, it's really about understanding what sort of foods work, and also food is meant to bring us joy. Once we take the joy equation out of that, it becomes torture. So it's really getting to know my client, understanding what foods she really enjoys, what she detests, and there's no forcing of, if you don't like broccoli, we won't make you eat broccoli. But, it's more of a flexible sort of meal, like a nutritional guide. And why it's flexible is because that will then give you the knowledge and empower you to be able to make those decisions later on when we're not working together anymore. So initially there is more hand holding, but usually towards the end of a program, a client is sort of, this free bird, and she's, maybe sharing recipes with me and motivating me. And I love it when we get to that point. But apart from nutrition, we also look at lifestyle. And, there is one nice big connect between sort of stress and also nutrition, right? So we look at breaking sort of unhealthy eating habits. We look at working on a client's building like a healthier relationship with food, and even things like eating disorders, which is something that I personally struggled with in my teenage years. And it's something that's very close to my heart, And but when it comes to that, so just to be clear, if I do suspect a client has an eating disorder, I try to provide as much support as I can to the point where I feel I try to assess if she probably needs more support from a mental health expert. And then if that's required, I've seen this in the past as well, where, if I'm working with a mental health expert, with someone who has a serious eating disorder, the two things again complement themselves really well in helping a client sort of recover and heal from that. So, apart from all of that, the emotional connection to food, kind of breaking past sort of cycles of eating unhealthily and bad relationships with food, and celebrating food, right? Now, apart from that, we look at physical activity. Again, there is no one size fits all approach, even with physical activity. Just because someone at 40 is running a marathon, it doesn't mean that you should be too. You could be in completely different hormonal sort of stages of your life. So it's really trying to understand, getting to know my client really well, and then making sure she's doing the right sort of exercise to support her goals. Apart from that, we look at sleep and making sure you're getting good quality sleep, and what are the things that are actually taking away from your sleep. I talked about stress management, which is a big one, but sometimes in a session, ideally we would talk about nutrition and lifestyle, but if a client comes to me miserable, we might just put aside like 20 minutes to just meditate or do some deep breathing together to begin with, because I know it's not going to go anywhere if, there's already so much on her mind. So yeah, a session, can really kind of vary from just touching on, the obvious things to getting into really deep sort of things. But that's what helps me help my client, is getting to know them, what makes them who they are.
Another controversial topic these days is the use of supplements. We have a growing body of nutritionists who lean towards taking supplements, blaming the quality of our food these days, and hence the need for supplements in our diet. However, there's also a strong lobby against it, which says that our body can actually not absorb these supplements well. So what is your take on that?
So the thing with supplements is it can be a double-edged sword. Okay, they obviously have their pros and their cons. I think the first question you really need to ask yourself is why. Why am I considering it? Why do I need it? Can I fill this gap? Through my own nutrition. So I'll start with the pros. Obviously, it is convenient. It's something that people today would want convenience, and so popping a pill is a lot easier than getting in 100 grams of this and 20 grams of that. So the convenience aspect is there, and then also certain supplements can really help in terms of supporting very specific health needs, and in addition to that, fill nutritional gaps. Okay, and and people take supplements as well for enhanced performance and other sort of things, and all that sort of works. But the thing to note here is supplements are not magic bullets. And everyone needs to be aware of this. Yes, they're wonderful for all the reasons that I mentioned, but again, you need to look at why. Why are you considering even having a supplement? Can you actually fill that gap, or are you just being lazy? Right? You talked about absorbance, and that is a big issue. We don't know. We really don't know. How much is effective, and we won't know for months. The thing with supplements as well is mostly you won't even understand or realize if they're working till a few months later. So a lot of people tend to take them and then kind of just stop because they're like, oh, 2 weeks later, nothing's happened. Again, like I said, it's not a magic bullet. If you use it in complements to a good lifestyle and sort of nutritional plan, then it may work for you. Okay, but again, like you talked about absorption rates. If you want to look, when you're thinking about supplements, you really want to look at the quality. And another issue that is very big when it comes to supplements is the source of where you're getting it. There are so many companies out there. I think, they're just growing by the day, by the minute. You really need to do your background and your background checks on, is this company trustworthy? Where are they getting their resources from? Quality really, really matters when it comes to supplements. And so in my practice, I do use supplements for certain clients because of certain situations, but I would never really recommend anything I've never personally tried myself. And I'm not a big supplement person, but I would not preach unless I know it, is going to help. And the other thing that we need to be careful about with supplements is there is a lifespan. You need to be cycling through them.
Yeah.
A deficiency can actually be better, like not as harmful as toxicity.
Excess, yeah.
So, just because you're taking a supplement and you think it's really working well for you doesn't mean you continue taking it every day for the rest of your life. You want to stop maybe after a few months, or, take it every alternate day or something like that to avoid toxicity from happening. And lastly, it's just fads. There are so many fads. I mean, if you go on social media, there are just all these quick fixes all around, promising all sorts of miraculous results overnight. Please run far away from those. Do your due diligence basically, and work with someone, work with an expert who can help you.
So, Malinda, we spoke about gut health. We spoke about cortisol. We also spoke about supplements. And all of this sounds too technical, almost too advanced for a layman to actually understand and then identify what he or she should do in order to attain optimal health. So does this mean it's actually not possible for a person like myself who doesn't have access to, premium coaches or nutritionists to have the kind of health that we always dreamed of?
That's a wonderful question. No, of course it is possible, but it would be extremely advantageous to have, an expert working alongside you. There are a lot of reasons for that, and I'll go into that. But, think about it. We all, at some point or another, are working on, different aspects of our health. Now you need to be honest with yourself. Like, how far have you actually gotten on your own, right? A lot of times, we get to a certain point and then we plateau. That's a very common term that's used. And then why are you plateauing? And then people don't know how to get out of that plateau. And so, at different points in your life, you want to maybe sit back and just sort of question, could it be advantageous to me right now to have the support of an expert? And yes, when you do work with the right expert, it can really set you on your pursuit for optimal health, in the right direction. Now, working with a coach, you can work on it on your own, but working with a coach, you have someone who's there, like keeping you accountable and on track. Apart from all the jargons and the, we talked about all the technical stuff, put all of that aside. We need to firstly look at someone's motivation. And their accountability how likely are you to stay accountable to your goals?
That's the most important, if you ask me.
Exactly. So working with an expert, you have someone who's there, sort of helping you, guide you, sort of every step of the way. More importantly than that, it's not just about accountability. So if I'm working with a client and I feel like beyond a certain point she's just not making progress. And this is something she struggled with in the past herself, because she's come to me saying, now I just can't get beyond that. And I've helped her get a little further, and again, we're stuck. Now, for me, that's a big red warning flag that, maybe we need to be looking at other aspects of her health. There could be something else causing this. This is something you won't really kind of figure out on your own. And again, we all tend to take our own sort of health very differently to when we're working with someone else. I do that to myself, even as a professional. So just having the accountability, but also having someone who has the knowledge to understand if things are right or wrong, and to be able to intervene when it's required. Then we talked about all the technical stuff, and integrative nutrition really is about empowering you with that knowledge lifelong. So when you're working with an expert, you're going to get that knowledge, you're going to get that know-how, you're going to understand why I'm never eating bread again for the rest of my life, because it's doing this to me. I'm not saying everyone has to stop eating bread, but I'm just explaining, giving an example. You now have the understanding of that. And you start to look at food as a point of celebration. A lot of the times when we try to work on things ourselves, we tend to fall into this circle or cycle or trap of, I'm not seeing results. Now, I'm going to blame myself. And then, it becomes a vicious cycle. There's none of that. Whenever things are just sort of being halted, like I said, I intervene. We get, try and get things back on track. And, like I said, I mean, it's a very nice celebration of not just food, but just as you as a person. Yeah.
I think I celebrate with food, way too much and way too often.
We all do. Yes.
So, as we near the end of this conversation, I have just two more questions for you.
Sure.
The first one is for a family that has people from all age groups, what kind of 2 or 3 things can they keep in mind to make sure that they're focusing on well-being for everybody? Because it's not possible to have dedicated plans or lifestyle for each individual. So what kind of tips would you share for them?
Sure. So I'm going to start with nutrition. And this is a really big one. And it's very simple little changes that can make such a big difference. It's how we cook our food and what we're cooking our food with. Are you using the right oils? Are you using the right amount of oil? Are you getting your vegetables and all your produce and whatever it may be from the right sources? Are you eating the right vegetables for the right time of the year? It's just getting those basics right. And again, I mean, you talked about different age groups, and there are different nutritional requirements of different age groups. But if you can get that basic of making sure your food is at least cooked and prepared and sourced from the right places, no matter what the age gap requirements are, everyone's going to be meeting their requirements and in a much healthier way. Now, apart from that, especially for a family with kids, I mean, I encourage this in all families, but especially in a family with kids, you are literally molding your child's relationship with food for a lifetime, from even before they can speak. And then they're watching and they're learning. So if mommy's on a diet, they're going to think, okay, at some point I'm going to need to be on a diet too. I'm not saying, don't eat clean or whatever, but we need to be very careful about the words that we use around our children and the attitude that we display around food around our children. And so to begin with, I think eating meals as a family is a very important thing. Because again, we talked about the joy that food brings. Eating is also it's a special it brings a special bond between people, especially families. Your child will come to the table and talk about their day. Your grandfather will talk about, back in the day we did this or did that. And it's a really nice time for them to, for a child to be set up for life, thinking of food as a nice communal sort of family time. And to bring very positive emotions about food. We don't want the opposite to happen. Now, having said all of that, of course, you can tailor your nutritional needs to the different age groups, right? Like children, for example, need a lot more healthy carbs because they're developing very quickly. And then older people obviously need food that is probably easily chewable. So you just make your you make your tweaks here and there. But if you can get these basics right, one big happy family.
One last question. What is that one personal habit of yours that you think has dramatically brought about a positive change in your life?
One?
Yes.
You're putting me on the spot here. This is hard. At the risk of sounding too cliche or oversimplifying things, I would say it is just not taking things too seriously. Learning to really celebrate life, like we talked about. And I'm talking about every aspect. Say you've had a slip up in your diet and you've gone and had a bar of chocolate, like I'm a chocolate lover. I take that as a moment of celebration. It's not going to set me back. It's, in my practice, I very strongly believe that any moment is as good as the next to start over. And that's fine. Just sort of bringing joy and not taking life too seriously, no matter what it is.
So thank you so much, Malinda. This was such a fun, interesting conversation. Like all the conversations I've had so far, they've been kind of introspective for me. As a woman, as a mother, I think all the points that you spoke about, they hit hard. And I'm going to take these learnings and implement in my own family. So thank you so much for making the time. I know your kids are back home waiting for you. So thank you so much. To all my viewers out there, I'm sure you found this conversation pretty interesting. Please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it in your circles as much as you can. Thank you.